Hello and welcome to the Skycast, Fantasy Football Scouts Sky Fantasy Football version of the regular Scoutcast. Game Week 47 is still going on and doesn't finish until Thursday. Then Game Week 48 starts up on Saturday. My name is Joe and today I'm joined by Luke to look at our teams and the best use of transfers and captains for Game Week 48. Welcome Luke, how are you?
I'm okay, Joe. I'm all right. I was doing much better until Southampton played, I'll tell you that. Danny Ings has been an absolute killer for, I think, both me and you,
Yeah.
sadly. And to top it off, I actually had Danny Ings at least in my main team, and I removed him for Jimenez. So obviously I have to count the Jimenez points I got in between, which has been pretty good. But as a one-off, that was devastating, I would suggest. And if you depending on what side you fell of that, I think that could be quite season defining at this point. At least it feels like it.
Yeah, definitely. Hurt both of us for differing reasons, but we'll come to that shortly. Well, let's have a look at your teams. So I'm going to put both your teams up together, actually, because let's have a look at the picture. So just for the benefit of those listening on the podcast, you've got two teams here. One's got Calvert-Lewin in, and one's got Salah in. Which would you say is your main one, or neither main at the moment?
The one with Salah was always been. I tend to not change it depending on which is doing better. I just keep saying that the first team was my team. That was always my plan. So the A team is the one with Salah in.
Right. Okay. Well, your A team is Ederson, Gomez, Van Dijk, Sionju, who's been pretty handy recently. Kevin De Bruyne, Barnes, Grealish, Sarr, Fernandez, Salah and Jimenez up front. And your B team, so slightly more risky. You've got Calvert-Lewin and Jimenez up front. Midfield of De Bruyne, Jota, Grealish, Sarr, Fernandez, Van Dijk and Alexander-Arnold at the back, with Aurier sandwiched in between them, and Ederson again in goal. So a few more risks with your B team, and your A team, going for the likes of Salah. But one thing I've noticed about those teams, particularly your A team, is the mid, and I have the same issue with my team. The midfield has suddenly looked very tired.
Yes.
I came into this looking at your midfield a few weeks ago and my midfield and thought, yeah, well, this is it. There we go. Grealish, Sarr, Barnes. We got loads of captaincy covered here, lots of value. And now I'm looking at that type of midfield and I'm going, God, I want to get rid of a lot of them.
Yeah.
What's your thinking about your teams at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's quite unfortunate because going into the break, we had. I think those were pretty good. I mean, the likes of Harvey Barnes was looking very, very good. Grealish was obviously looking pretty much essential, just because of not only being the star, but they had quite a good run of games, etc. And then Sarr himself was incredible form for Watford. And looked a really, really good enabler, to be honest with you. And I kind of blame him for the majority because obviously he's the reason I didn't have Danny Ings because I feel like I can cover that game with Sarr. We don't have the transfers to be messing around. So I'm thinking, well, if you take Ings out, I've still got cover for that day and I can get one of these great forwards that's doing very, very well in the other game. So it's very tired. The problem is I've only got 3 swaps, Joe, for both teams. So it's very, very hard to work out what to do with them here. And I think a lot of people in that position. I mean, if it was up to me, obviously, I would just free hit that entire midfield pretty much. I mean, Fernandez and De Bruyne would probably stay.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, I would look to ship out. I don't think it's too wise to just go straight into it now, however, because for me particularly, I think the Liverpool and Man City game, which is coming up, I mean, there's lots of theories floating around. No one knows at the end of the day what they'll do. But I would suggest that we don't really know how these two teams are going to play after that game. I think this game, they might be more close to full strength. I mean, that's just a wild pun. But after that game, we might get a better idea of what Liverpool and Man City are going to do. And, I've got, for example, 3 Liverpool in one team and maybe 2 or 3 Man City in that team as well. So there's a lot of coverage from both those teams, which ordinarily would be good. But then if they start to rotate those guys quite a lot or do strange things, suddenly I want to use those swaps on maybe those players. And even though the other guys like Grealish and Sarr are maybe only getting 2 points each week, suddenly that's 2 points more than what I would be getting from the other people. So as much as I really want to change it now, I feel like I should wait at least until I've seen what Liverpool and Man City are going to do before I steam into it. However, if you're obviously in a position to have where you've got 10 or 12 transfers, I think, or even I'd say somewhere between sort of around 7 or 8, then you probably want to start making some moves in midfield, I would suggest, if you're sitting with a similar team.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think we know some of the fixtures that are coming out in terms of the TV days, the single match days, but we don't know the final few.
Yeah.
So
indeed.
for me, what remaining transfers I've got left, I kind of want to wait a lot. I have got some in mind for my meager amount of transfers. I think I've got 5 left at the moment, but I definitely want to keep 2 or 3 back for that time. So in case there's a single match day. And as we've seen, one of my teams has Pope in, and the other one doesn't. So the B team with Pope in, boom, 22 points last night. Fantastic,
yeah, mad, isn't it?
And that's the kind of thing. And I didn't want to use one of my transfers on that, so in my A team, and so I kind of want to keep those in mind, really, and especially
and that actually, I just want to jump in there. That actually shows it. I mean, I missed that game. A lot of people identified that as a missed game, and as always, I mean, we could have easily got away with that. It could have been 1-1, and you could have missed it. That's fine. As ever, though, you need to be in it to win it, and just having that player to cover and do that gives you that massive 22 points that no one else has got. I mean, he's probably quite low owned. I would imagine it's very, very low owned, and. Honestly, it's that fear factor that why people make those transfers to cover these guys, and 70% of the time it won't work, and you'll be quite disappointed you've made the move.
Yeah.
But it's just covering it for the situations like that. I mean, you go Ings and Pope over these two days, and you're on 30-40 points that a lot of people won't have.
So with you, I mean, lots of people will be in this situation, got a very small amount of transfers left. What is your realistic rank aim? Whereabouts are you at the moment with these teams, and what's your realistic rank aim with these?
I mean, I always go for top 100. I don't think that's going to happen now unless there's a major drop off with a lot of people. I'm just need to check where I am now as I'm looking at some players at the moment. So I'm around 1,500. So for me, if I can get top 1,000, I'm just going to have to take that. I was much higher than that, but just over the last few weeks have been dropping rapidly. So if I can just sort of cling on to top 1,000, I'm just going to have to take that, unfortunately, and roll on next season.
Okay. I'm sort of in a similar situation. So here's my teams. So my A team has plummeted from about just outside the top 500 to around 800. So and that was the Ings factor. I dropped about 200-300 places because of Danny Ings. Really annoying. So my A team is Henderson, Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, Sionju. Midfield, I've started to tweak a tiny bit. So Barnes, Grealish, Sarr and Fernandez. So Grealish and Sarr are the 2 I've got my eye on dumping. Up front, I've got Heung-min Son, Aubameyang and Jimenez. And with this A team, I'm looking to move on Aubameyang to KDB after, obviously, he has played against Norwich. I'm also minded to keep him. I'm obviously got to keep him, I think, for the next game, because at least he'll get me 2 points, I presume, which is Arsenal Wolves, and then I'll move to KDB. So I'll get 2 more games of Aubameyang, move on to KDB for Southampton. And I haven't got any Man City coverage at all in that team, so I need something. And so KDB, great. And KDB for Southampton, the next day, vroom, for the rest of the season, for the running. KDB for keeps. And I need that to make sure I don't fall back any further, because if KDB hauls and it's a day when he's the obvious captain choice, well, that's the end there. That's it. That's it for me. So that's
I think with him as well, I mean, we already knew he was the best midfielder in the game. Now that we've seen that he's almost definitely on penalties, and he's taken the last 2 or 3, he just added another string to his bow where you can't afford to go without. I think at the end of the day, if he doesn't play in the game, then we're all in the same position. So I think you just have to have that guy. So that
in this A team of mine, this is the one I want to try. I think top 500 is what I would like. To be honest, at this stage of the season, to stay in the top 1,000 will do me. If I'm outside the top 1,000, I wouldn't be very happy.
Yeah, it's really strange because I think usually in this time in Sky, we've talked about it a lot. You've got that situation where many of the people above us will have used all their transfers or will be in a worse transfer position. And generally you will climb almost no matter what you do, as long as you've played it well in terms of your transfers. So I'm still quite hopeful we can. It's just that obviously it's hard to judge when you've had all the players that are active and had those swaps. will have obviously used them on the likes of Pope and Ings. So over these two, it's hard to judge at this point. So I'm still quite hopeful.
Yeah.
The other factor in that is a lot of people who had a lot of swaps and maybe had dropped off and not been playing much will have then, when football's restarted, come back on and maybe had a quick go at their teams and sort of tried to rectify it. Will have used, they may have, like some of my friends, for example, who don't play that seriously, may have 20 swaps, etc. So there's no reason why they wouldn't have had Ings, Pope, the like. They could have then suddenly had a really high score or really good this week, but then they might drop off again as well, if you see what I mean, because they suddenly start losing the interest of doing the captain every single day. So I'm still fairly hopeful we can climb a lot, and I think so. You can make it.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, look at my team, and it's really, I mean, Aubameyang to KDB is a strategic move. To be honest, I'd be happy to keep Aubameyang, who, you know, but it's just one Arsenal place there. But it's Grealish and Sarr, the cheaper ones, I think I can get much better value with. So the two I'm looking at, obviously I think I need to get Ings in. And I need to get Ings in for the final few fixtures. But also he's going for the golden boot. So there's going to be shot tier, hopefully. There's going to be man of the matches. There's going to be goals. And if he scores against, say, Man City, you know, that's going to help him with a man of the match, that type of thing. So I'm looking...
I would have thought on that note, by the way, that he might end up getting penalties. It's not like he's a bad striker of the ball. I know Ward-Prowse normally takes them, but you would have thought...
I've seen it before with Chelsea, and we have way back when Drogba wasn't on penalties. Lampard was, obviously, with Chelsea. Drogba going for the golden boot. What did Lampard do? Handed the ball to Drogba. Drogba scored the penalty. And that was the final match. I can see that happening, as you said.
Definitely, especially if Southampton are 2-0 up or something like that. I mean, there's no reason to use Ward-Prowse for it.
Yeah, Southampton are... That's what they're going for, really. They're going for their star striker to get the golden boot. That's a major achievement for that club.
If I was them, I'd try and just pretend he's injured for the rest of the season so no one buys him for the next season.
Just don't look at him. Don't look at those goals.
Yeah, exactly.
So Ings, 2 man of the matches so far this month. Okay.
Yeah.
He's in for me for Grealish. I have enough money in the bank once I get Aubameyang to KDB. I have enough money to do... It's just one of those no-brainer moves. I'm going to get Ings in ahead of Everton away. That's Ings time for me for the duration. Sarr replacement. I have 8.4 and I can go midfield or defender. So that's going to depend on remaining fixtures, and that is going to depend on when we find out what the fixtures are. So
I think I've got a few names to throw in the hat there, but obviously, like you say, it's better to wait for fixtures probably. But I've got a few names there, I think.
Ward-Prowse would be a possibility, even though I've just
I like him. I like Armstrong as well. I know he didn't play because a little bit of it, but he is very, very good for Sky. I think
most shots on target in June with 6. Ward-Prowse. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm looking at that, but as I said, I'm not. If I'm getting Ings as well, I'm just looking at teams, because it's a position that can get a bit tired in. I may go for something like just double up on Wolves, get a Wolves defender and get Doherty in, something like that. Bolly, and just go for that move, something nice and safe. But
I think as we have no limit on the amount of players we could have, any teams that have done that sort of 4 or 5 Wolves defenders strat, or just loaded up completely with a blanket back 5 or 4 from one team. Obviously, if you've had Wolves over this period, you've absolutely flown. I was just going to ask you a question, actually. I don't know the answer to this. I assume it's no, but then maybe it is. Normally, the final day of the season, we have every team playing at exactly the same time. Is that going to be the case this season? I haven't even looked into it.
It is. And so that is... I definitely would like 1 or 2 transfers.
That's what I was going to say. From my experience before in the past, there's a temptation to use the swaps, but come the final day, I mean, the lineups are usually a little bit crazy anyway, but in this situation, with leagues potentially won, relegation potentially done, then the coronavirus, etc., I think that there could be some nasty surprises on that day. And if you're sat with 1 or 2, you can, and you suddenly look at your team and you've got 3 players when you needed to, especially if you're in like the top 10 in the world or something, and you look at your team and think, oh God, I've only got 3 players now. You're going to need 1 or 2 swaps, I think, just to at least get a captain. Do you know what I mean? Like the best captain on that day potentially.
I mean, just on that point, while you're there, I'm just gonna pull up the fixtures. So Gameweek 38. Just looking in terms of good players to because we'll know the team sheets. We'll know that 2. Kickoffs at 3. From 2, we'll know the team sheets. So Arsenal play Watford at home. So
Yeah, and I think the really big one, to be honest, is probably Man City at home to
Man
Norwich.
City will know the lineups as well. So
Yes.
if you get, so De Bruyne is going to play, which let's just assume he's going to play. So that could be Mahrez, Foden, Jesus, any of those.
I really think,
Laporte.
I mean, David Silva's retiring at the end of the
Yeah,
season, isn't he? I
yeah,
would be stunned if David Silva doesn't play that one, assuming he's fit.
yeah,
I would also thought it's almost poetic to play Foden in that because he's almost handing over the reins.
yeah, yeah.
I'm getting a bit romantic here, but I
No,
feel
no.
like maybe there's a chance De Bruyne doesn't play that one, but more likely they all play. And I feel like going Foden or David Silva in
Yeah.
that one could be, I mean, man of the match. David Silva plays in that game as long as I mean, he's going to have all of the ball. It's
See,
against Norwich.
and the
He's man of the match already, I would say.
Chelsea against Wolves is a tricky one to call. Burnley against Brighton,
Yes.
so is pretty poor. Arsenal against Watford, yeah, I think there's from there. Everton against Bournemouth. I noticed you had Calvert Lewin. Everton at home to Bournemouth is a good shout as well. So yeah, it could be that someone like Luca Dean comes in. Leicester, Man U, not so it's hard to call. As you said, Man City, Norwich. That's the one. I'll be just looking at the Man City lineup. I think and whatever transfers I've got left, whatever money I've got
Yes.
left, I'm just gonna have a look.
100%. When that team comes out,
Yeah,
if I've managed to keep a swap
yeah,
or I'm in a position where you've got two swaps left, then I think you just go David Silva and one
yeah,
other in for that game.
definitely.
Mendy, for example, or someone like that, or whoever's playing up front, and you just chance it. I think that's well, it's going to be your last opportunity, but
Yeah,
probably your best opportunity to claim, especially if people have used all their swaps and cannot react to the lineup at
yeah,
that point. So
yeah, definitely. Foden captaincy. If you see him in the starting lineup, differential, especially if KDB blanks. I'll just my B team's up on the screen. 7 transfers left. Whoop de doo. I've got Pope, who was my captain last night. Van Dijk, Alexander Arnold, Baldock, De Bruyne, Barnes, Mount, who I'm very happy with. Fernandez, Heung-min Son, Jimenez, and guess what I did when I had my transfers? I thought, what shall I get? I'll take a bit of a cheeky punt. Will I get Danny Ings in before that game against Watford? No. I decided to be very clever and get Troy Deeney in. And look what happened. Absolute. But nevertheless, Nick Pope has helped me move. A couple of weeks ago, I was about 6,000 with this. I'm 3,700 now. So
nice.
I've got an outside shot with 7 transfers at a top 1k, very outside. But I'll just see whatever I can get with this. Nevertheless, I've got Deeney now, and Watford do have a few good fixtures coming up. He stays for them and moves on later. He's probably going to just go to Ings, and I've missed out on Ings' massive haul there. But nevertheless, I think that's quite good. The rest of the transfers, we're looking for those single game days, looking for the best captains on particular days when few people are playing. And I mean, if I've got 5 transfers left for this, that Man City squad against Norwich at the end, I'm just going to load up. I'm just going to absolutely load up Man City and hope they do one of their 7-0 spectaculars or something against Norwich. Meanwhile, let's have a look at Gameweek 48, which is coming up soon, coming up this weekend. And looking at captains. Who are your captains for Gameweek 48? I've got the fixtures up on the screen.
Okay, where does it start on here? Because I'm looking at the FPL site, which is obviously tricky now to do it.
Okay.
Does that start with Saturday the 4th?
Saturday the 4th, Norwich
Yeah.
against Brighton is the midday kickoff.
Okay, well, I think Manchester United at home to Bournemouth is obviously the standout there.
Yeah.
I've currently got Fernandez in my side. I know there's a little bit of worry because he played quite a lot of minutes recently, but obviously they've already got the Brighton game before that, so that could change things. But I think there's a question later on about who we should be getting. And I think because Man United obviously play this single game against Brighton, they then play this home game against Bournemouth. And then the week afterwards, they're playing away to Villa. And then again, they have a single match day at home to Southampton. So I really think that going in on Man United now is a very, very good idea. So I may get Martial, who's 9.6 million. Generally, Rashford has been better than Martial for Sky this season, has more shots, etc. But just given the fact that he had that long-term injury, Martial looks bang in form and is a little bit cheaper. I think both work, to be honest. But I think Martial, especially as he had that rest and Igalo played, is looking probably better at this stage. So I'm probably going to move to him. I also really like Wan-Bissaka because often he's playing almost as a wing back. He's getting the odd assist here or there, which isn't really his game, but he can get them. And obviously, we know that Man United's defence has been very, very good, and he gets the tackles. So I do really like him at 8.6 million. I think he's probably a little bit underpriced with this version of Man United.
He's quite a good captaincy option for Manchester United.
Agreed, yeah.
Possibly if Fernandez, because you've noticed it as well, that it's very worrying with Fernandez at the moment. Playing great, assisting the assist sort of role, and he's getting the minutes. And there's a point when he's just going to just collapse.
Well, I think it's a pretty good idea to have 2 or 3 Man United for that reason, because we'd easily get to that lineup and see that Fernandez is rested for one, and suddenly you don't have a captain. So, I mean, obviously you could react on that particular day, but some of the other games, so the game we're talking about at the moment, obviously Norwich and Brighton kick off at 12:30, and the Man United lineups at 3:00. You're not going to know, are you? I would suggest Man United could probably win that one without Fernandez if needed.
Yeah,
that's quite brave actually, because he's completely transformed our team. But
that is the problem with having good fixtures. Ironically, is that they can be benched at any time, and the last thing you want is though for those great fixtures is your top players to be benched. But yeah, it's a situation to monitor there. I don't know. I was looking at. Let's have a look. I'm just going to have a look at the transfers about Wan-Bissaka, because now you've given me an idea. And so let's have a look. All clubs. Just scrolling down. So this is 8.6. I might just about be able to do that with Grealish to him, and I'm starting to think that's a no-brainer as well. And then just leave Ings for a little bit.
Anyway, because I can't see. He's an extremely fit lad as well, isn't he? I can't really see anyone taking over that spot. I mean, you'd only argue maybe Dalot has a chance, and he's nowhere to be seen. So
I haven't got the transfers and the restructuring to be able to squeeze Martial in or Rashford, I think, and I'm quite happy with most of my strikers that I've got. But Wan-Bissaka, as you said, is a really, really good alternative captain there. He gets those tackle bonuses as well as the assist and a clean sheet as well. I mean, this could be a huge score. Yeah, thanks for that. That's a really good. That's a really.
You're the only person who could be that excited by a defender, so thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Yeah, so captains. Yeah, so what about next day then?
Okay, so Sunday the 5th of July is that game, isn't it? Yes. Obviously, you've got Man City away to Southampton, and you've got Liverpool at home to Aston Villa. I think because we're not going to know the lineups, it's tricky. However, I still much prefer just going for one of those players, given the upside from both of those teams compared to all the other teams playing on those days. I mean, you could argue with Burnley at home to Sheffield United as the first game, going Pope isn't the maddest idea, because you could easily see a clean sheet in that game, and therefore you've just locked it in. It seems pretty defensive though when Liverpool at home to Villa probably is the standout there. Southampton are playing pretty well, and Man City aren't always the best away from home. So, I've got Salah in my team. He's going for the Golden Boot. I'll just put him on Salah and just hope he plays and goes for it. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer. But if you're sat on the likes of Van Dijk, Trent Alexander, we've been here before, they can easily do very well in that game.
Yeah, that's my shout as well. Definitely for that. I haven't got Salah, but Van Dijk. And then moving on to the next day, it's slightly trickier. This is the one that I sort of planned for. It's Spurs against Everton, and you got a bit of Calvert-Lewin. You've got Aurier still. Options.
Yeah, so Aurier in one team, Calvert-Lewin in the other team. In that situation where I'm cheering on my striker to score against my defender, but my defender to get attacking points. But there we go. I do like those options for this week. Richarlison's been great all season. I think that he's still an option to get in. I know he's not really done much since we've come back, but we've been here before with Richarlison, where he seems to go on these sort of streaks where he could just come in at any point and suddenly start scoring heavily. He always has tackles as well to fall back on, which is pretty good. I do actually like I don't know how to say his name, but the Dutch guy, Bergwijn.
Yeah.
I think he's not bad. He's 9.2 million. I think if you can't stretch to the likes of Son, he's just looked very good since he's come to our league. I think he's obviously got goals. He shoots on sight. He's got a hell of a shot on him. Very powerful shot.
Yeah.
So I do like him. I think that he's a cheeky differential. I think one of the questions later again is about players under 10 million. And given he's got this individual day, and not many people will have him at all, I do quite like him.
And we'll know the team sheet. So if you see Bergwijn on the team sheet, bingo, gone for him. There we go. Yeah, because he's one of those players where, a bit like Pulisic, really. So I've got Pulisic in my FPL side, but I haven't got him in my Sky side. And I kind of wish I had, even though there's an injury doubt. But he's the kind of player that if he's benched, I think he could come on and score. If he's starting, I'm pretty certain he'll be the best player on the pitch. And Bergwijn is not, maybe not, he's got Son, he's got Kane, but I think he can score. He can score any game. These wingers who can score gold dust.
Yeah, and he plays Bournemouth after this game, which is obviously a great fixture. He's then home to Arsenal, which I think that's not a bad fixture, given the way Arsenal are playing at the moment. And obviously it's a very, very big game. So you would, motivation-wise, there shouldn't be a problem there. And he's amongst their best players, so I can't see why he wouldn't play that one. And then we're on to the likes of the final days and stuff, where they're playing Newcastle, they're playing Leicester, they're playing Palace. I think it's a good little run for Spurs. And again, it's just in the interest of being different. I think we talked pre-stream here, especially if you're in the top 50 in the world. You've got designs in finishing one of those cash places. Maybe you've won all your mini leagues already, or you're not in any mini leagues, and some people don't do that. I think it's the time to start going a little bit different, because at the end of the day, if you end up finishing 100 for 150th, it doesn't matter. You're not getting any money for 50th either. So I think you're going to have to try and maybe be a little bit different, just to try and get that top 5 positions. And you can apply that to your mini leagues as well, if you're doing it in that way instead.
Definitely. So moving on to the Tuesday, we've got Palace, Chelsea, Watford, Norwich, and Arsenal play Leicester. I've got Pulisic, great. Other than that,
it's not good, is it? No. I think your shout of Mason Mount is probably one of the ones you want to look at. I mean, playing Palace when Palace are at home is always a bit scary, because they can obviously get those clean sheets quite often. But that's why I had Sarr in my team. I mean, he's home to Norwich on this game. So, I'm going to be leaving him in at least for this game, just because I'd kick myself if I now removed him and suddenly Watford looked all right and Sarr got a goal or two in that game. It's obvious that he could get it in that game. So, given I haven't got Aubameyang, I think I just have to stick with Sarr at least until that game.
I've got the same thing with Sarr, and he's won for the chop at some point, but not just yet, because he's got these fixtures coming up. If Sarr's going to do anything, it's going to be at these types of fixtures. Southampton, our defence has come back too good, so I wouldn't read a tremendous amount into it. They completely stalled Watford's attack, and they got Pearson in charge. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Moving over to the Wednesday, we've got Sheffield United, Wolves, Man City, home to Newcastle. It's that one, really. Brighton, Liverpool, and West Ham, Burnley. Looks like KDB o'clock on that one.
Yeah, I mean, we get the lineups as well on that day. So we really just hope that we see him and we don't have to do anything. You see, if Kevin De Bruyne's in that lineup at home to Newcastle, don't even engage your brain for a second. Just stick it straight on him.
Exactly. And then on the Thursday, Bournemouth, Spurs, Everton, Southampton, Villa, Manchester United. So Manchester United or Spurs asset look ideal. Calvert-Lewin, though, could be a cheeky shout for you.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, given the way Southampton are playing at the moment, and Everton, probably the opposite is a risk. But by then, things could have changed. The matchup's still pretty good. The added bonus of seeing the lineups. So the 6 o'clock games are obviously Spurs, Bournemouth, Everton, Southampton. You've got Man United versus Villa, which you could argue is probably the best game on paper. But obviously, we won't know the lineup. So that's one I'm just going to have to decide on that day, see where the injuries have been, the press conferences, etc. See, who's in line for a start for Man United. If I know that Fernandez or Martial or Wan-Bissaka are playing, then I'll probably still edge that way. However, if we don't know that or it's not known, I'll be looking at Calvert-Lewin for sure at home to Southampton.
Yeah, so...
I mean, we already identified, about trying to take these chances now for the end of the season, but there are occasions, and I think the Wednesday, the 8th of July, where you don't take your chances. No. You just need to stay level. So you need to identify which of these match days are your chance to make a difference. And I would suggest Wednesday, the 8th of July is not one you want to try and mess around with.
So I'm talking of chances. So my captain's penciled in for that first Saturday. I'm thinking Jimenez at home to Arsenal, and the reason I'm thinking that is because because Fernandez ordinarily would be against Bournemouth, but if Fernandez is going to come away with a couple of points, and a lot of people are going to captain him, Jimenez might be overlooked, so that's what I'm thinking there.
Yeah.
Van Dijk against Villa, that's for me a no-brainer. I have no Salah. KDB against Southampton's possible, but if Van Dijk against Villa, I mean, that's just going to happen. Son against Everton for that single game day, and then I'm looking at Sionju or Barnes against Arsenal. I did like the look of Barnes in the FA Cup playing, so I'm sort of not too bothered about him at the moment. KDB against Newcastle, definitely. Once again, Van Dijk against Brighton is a sort of a backup captaincy there, and I'm going to end on Son against Bournemouth. But if I bought Ings against Everton, Ings away, going for the Golden Boot. Everton's defence I quite like the look of at the moment, and they are keeping clean sheets. So I think realistically for that one, it has to be Son. But in my B team, the one I've got Deeney in, that Tuesday, I'm going to go for Deeney against Norwich. Deeney at home to Norwich, surely. And that's the differential captain that I'm hoping for on that day. But it's a B team. We've had some questions. Let's have a look through them. So here's one from. This is slightly retrospective because this is about this current game week. So Mark Dorney is thinking about getting in either Aubameyang or Nketiah for the Norwich game that's taking place. So chances are most people might be watching this after that Arsenal Norwich game. But if someone is minded to do that, he's got 7 transfers left. Is it worth doing long term in Sky? Because I'm not sure you're really going to want an Arsenal player until the final game week of the season. So, is it worth doing? But if you've got, say, 7 transfers or so, what would be your sort of plan on that?
Well, I'm in a few Sky groups with some very, very good players, and quite a few of them are saying that they're actually going to be taking Jimenez out for an Arsenal option. So. I think Jimenez to Aubameyang can work. I mean, a lot is coming down to this one game day. It's looking great on paper, isn't it? At the end, I think Aubameyang got rested, didn't he? So you would have thought if there's ever a time for him to score. I mean, how many times has Aubameyang gone in his career where he doesn't score for sort of 3 games in a row? It's not that often. He's close to a goal a game ratio player, isn't he? So just on that basis alone, against the worst defence in the league, I can see that, it's similar to the Pope situation or the Ings situation. If he gets a brace or a hat-trick in that game, suddenly it was worth it, especially as captain. So I do kind of like it. I do see your point, though, about do you want it further? But then if you look at the next game, it is actually Wolves versus Arsenal. So I don't think, Jimenez or Aubameyang in that one, I don't think it's much of a muchness there for me, really. Probably Jimenez slightly better, but I don't think that's too much of an issue. And then moving on, you've obviously got that Tuesday, 7th of July, where Arsenal are at home to Leicester on the day where there's not that many options. So people won't have Sarr for that or Deeney maybe for the Norwich, and they might not have any Chelsea options. So I do see it for that reason. You can always then move back to Jimenez if you want on the Wednesday, the 8th of July for the Sheffield United game. So I do kind of like that, I'll be honest, just on the off chance you're covering that Norwich game.
I think I've got too few transfers remaining to be able to kind of... I wish I had more, because I would look at doing that type of thing and keep Aubameyang or move Aubameyang. But for me, I'm KDB-less, so that's just the choice I'm going to make there. I'm going to go for shield rather than sword on that one. Ben C asks, should I save my 6 remaining transfers for the to be confirmed fixtures and possible injuries? I'm sure there are going to... That's something we haven't talked about, injuries. We are going to get a lot of them because we're already starting to see them. I'm having to restrain myself getting rid of Sarr. I mean this sums up playing Sky. Patience. You have to be.
Yes.
And with Sarr, it might not work out, but he's got the good fixtures, and you've only got a few transfers.
The biggest skill in this game, without doubt, I don't think anyone will tell you any different, is when to use a transfer and when not to use a transfer. Obviously, coupled with the captain's armband, can change things with that. And with 6, I mean, I would be suggesting to just continue to keep to the plan, really, of roughly 1 a week, which he seems to be able to. That will sort of tidy him over nicely. So I think if he keeps to that, he could do okay. And we've already just discussed Sarr a bit, haven't you? I would be tempted to leave him for at least the home to Norwich game, unless he's got a viable other captain on that day. If he has got the likes of Aubameyang at home to Leicester, then maybe he can look to move on. But otherwise, one a day. 1 a week, sorry, and make sure he's got some for the very last day. At least one for the last day is probably my strategy that I'd employ.
Yeah, definitely. If you're completely relying on Sarr for the captaincy, then yeah, it might be it might be time to look elsewhere. But at least have a backup, I would say. I would just, yeah, as you said, just sort of a backup. So for example, this game week's a good point in mind. Watford against Norwich. Sarr ordinarily would be a great captaincy shout. I'm not so sure, but I'd quite like to have him and see what happens. So for me, with Leicester assets, I'm actually thinking about them against Arsenal's defence. So someone like Barnes might be, and for that, as you said, those with Aubameyang as well, another shout there. But yeah, I would say hold at the moment, a hold for me.
It's just that when you couple these players with the armband, they can suddenly hit 20 or 30 points in one game. Yeah. So if you make a swap now for Sarr out and you bring in anyone else virtually, but then you're not captaining that person, you know, they've got a fairly sort of, you know, their ceiling is around 12 points if they do very, very well, I would suggest. You know, that's a goal a game or a clean sheet for the 2 games they play in between or whatever. You think, oh, I'm pretty happy with that. That transfer's got me 12 points. But then suddenly you get to the Watford home to Norwich game, and Sarr gets 1 goal and gets man of the match, and suddenly he's got 20 points straight away. So it just kind of depends which manager you are, whether you want to sort of pick him up in little bits, or whether you're happy to take those chances and roll the dice on the big hauls. And I think so far it's shown that, if you've gone with Ings and Pope and etc., it seems to be working to do it that way. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to work, but it's shown that it's very much favourable to cover those in it to win it at the end of the day. In it to win it if you've got those guys.
Hornet asks, are you looking at Spurs assets for Thursday, this coming Thursday, but also just in general for the remainder of the season and beyond? So I'm a Son man, you're an Aurier man. We keep forgetting about Harry Kane, I guess, because I've been caught out before. I had a terrible season, 3-4 years ago. It was the one where Harry Kane kept scoring like hat-tricks and braces.
Yeah, he scored a hat-trick against Leicester, didn't he, after a brace or something?
I'd run out of transfers and I moved from 5 to 1,000 rank to somewhere, God knows where. Just I don't even know if there was a number for it. Just not having Kane was so costly. My advice would just keep an eye on Kane, and if you've got any transfers left and you're able to get him in, you never know. He's an absolute rank swinger. But I think Aurier and Son are good options. Bergwijn you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as big a fan of Kane here. I think he's a different player now. I just think he looks so tired, even when he scored the other day. I know he's always going to have that shot in his locker, where he's just a great finisher overall, and he can find the net. So I don't think that's ever going to go, but I think given how tired he was and the comeback, I think there's just other options. And yeah, I already mentioned Bergwijn, or however you say it, is another one at 9.2 in midfield. I think that's a better punt, because how many other midfielders are really going to do that well compared to the strikers anyway? So I'd be tempted to not go with Kane there. And Aurier, Son and Bergwijn are all good options to me.
Yeah. Final question. For reasons unknown, asks, I've 3 precious transfers left. Please suggest 3 sub 10 million players for the rest of the season, any positions. I'm currently a 4-3-3, so nice and flexible, and there's a lot of choice. So I'm going to go first, because my answer's boring and your one's a bit more interesting. So I'd say strikers, Ings, 9 million. Or if you've got a bit more, Martial, 9.6 million. Don't even think about it. Just, they're the obvious ones. Midfield, Mahrez, 9.9. He seems to be playing most games. And I think even if he comes on, you're going to get some points from him. He's captaincy material if he starts. Defence, don't even think about Doherty, 8.5. Wolves have great fixtures. He can score, he can get assists. So don't overthink it. They're my ones. They're my really boring ones. They are ones I'm thinking of getting in, all of them. But now you've told me about Wan-Bissaka. But so yeah, for you, what players would you recommend?
Yeah, I think Joe's ones are obviously the standout ones there, and a lot's going to come down to what I discussed about whether you want to take a little bit of a chance to sort of move up the ranks. But those, I think a combination of getting some of those that Joe said, and maybe 1 or 2 of the ones I might mention might help. I mean, I've already mentioned quite a lot of them, to be fair. I think Aurier at 8.1, Jose Mourinho pretty much came out and said that he doesn't have any other options at right back. You can watch any game with him in, and you can see that he spends a lot of the time very, very high up the pitch. I don't necessarily think Spurs will keep that many clean sheets, but he has been okay for tackles. He can obviously get a lot of assists. and he takes the odd shot at goal. So I think he's a very valid punt, and one where in any given week he could haul massively as a result. Because obviously being that defender, I mean, we saw it with who was the guy who played up front for Cardiff, but he was actually a defender. I can't remember who it was.
I know what you mean. He was really cheap. He was a 4.2 defender who was a striker.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was now. I can't remember his
name either, but it was a legendary, even though we can't remember his name. But a legendary person.
But it's similar to the Lundstrom thing, where when you've got a player that far out of position, their ceiling becomes incredibly high. I mean, he's not quite that far out of position, but you know what I mean. Wan-Bissaka's obviously been mentioned. He's 8.6 million. I think he's just a very, very solid player for this run and can cover some Man United captaincy, you would have thought. I like Mendy at 9.1. This is obviously carries a little bit of risk. I mean, ideally I prefer Laporte, but he's 10.3 and he said under 10. Obviously, Mendy could miss the odd game, but I just feel like even if he misses the game, he could make up for it the next game. I mean, passing bonus is close to assured. He's obviously got very high chances of clean sheets, and his attacking output hasn't been as great since he came back from his injury. But you only have to watch the games to see that he's in and around that penalty area quite a lot of the time. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him get at least one attacking return before the season ends, possibly more. I still also, this one is an old favourite. Jordan Henderson's 8.4 million. Now, I know with Liverpool, this is why I said about waiting to see what they're going to do. So it might be a good idea to wait on this one. But when Henderson plays, and I feel like he's the kind of player where even if Liverpool change it all up all around the pitch, they'll probably want that guy just marshalling in the centre of midfield and just controlling and looking after the youngsters. So I feel like Henderson will probably still get some game time. I think passes, tackles, you know, he's got the lot, Henderson. He can haul really, really well. And before the break, Henderson went on a little bit of a run, maybe a month before the break or so, where I had him in my team and he did very, very well for me. So I do like him at 8.4 million. Bergwijn I've already mentioned, and the other standout one, apart from Martial, which you touched on, I just like Foden. I think Foden at 6.7 million. I think why not take the chance? Really, I feel like there's no way that he doesn't get minutes. Now he's not going to start every game for sure, but he's so cheap. So if you've got the likes of, we've mentioned like Grealish and Sarr and these people you're not really happy with, you know, you're looking at people that you could switch to. At 6.7 million, he could enable things other places. And if he only gets the last 20 minutes, you can see he can be devastating. He's a really good goal scorer. But the other part of me makes me think it's just because he's young and English, he's just going to be always have that chance for man of the match. You know, when we've already lost Aguero, who's a bit of a man of the match hog, and then you've got Kevin De Bruyne, who might be managed a little bit, who's probably the other man of the match hog in the team, then you're only really looking at the likes of maybe David Silva and Mahrez, who the minutes might be managed, and then the likes of Foden. I don't think many other players, it's not very often you'll see a defender get the man of the match for them, where it is for Liverpool. So yeah, Foden I think is just worth a go at 6.7 million. I wouldn't be advising to get him if you're number one in the world, but if you're a little bit lower down, I think we've already touched on him for the last game of the season. I think he could be gold.
I think that's a great point, and we've already said for the last game of the season, if we see him in the starting lineup, I really want a transfer left for that. But yeah, I think he's a good player to get in now. Man City's fixtures go good. As soon as they get Liverpool out of the way, Man City are just looking good.
I think he's going to either start the majority or he will come on in every game. I can't see why. I mean, with 5 subs as well, there's no reason for Foden not to come on. I know we've been here before with Pep where he bigs him up and then doesn't do anything with him. But now is surely his time, especially as if David Silva's starting games, he's probably going to be coming off 60 or 70th minute. And I would hope that Foden's the man that comes on for him.
Yeah, I mean, he is, and it's not like a case of like just giving the youngsters an opportunity and
no, exactly,
and then they can carry on being in the B team. He is the replacement, the tailor-made replacement. So it's not like the Liverpool are bound to be bedding in a lot of their youngsters and stuff. So, but they're not going to be replacements for Alexander-Arnold. They're just going to be getting minutes and getting.
No, Foden's been ready for a long time, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And also you kind of want the player that's on the pitch for Man City in the last 20 minutes, I think, most of the time, when the teams are just so knackered that they've played against, they've worn them down with all their passing. You kind of want those guys that are on the pitch for the last 20 minutes, in my opinion.
Definitely, especially the way it's going with matches at the moment. The first half's rather boring, the second half, okay. But in the meantime, thanks so much for joining me, Luke, and good luck with the game week, and we'll see everyone again next week.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe. See you guys next week. Good luck.